If you go into Chris's office, by the way, it's a mad scientist room. And so next thing you know, I found myself investing in what he told me to invest in. Every single thing he said has come true.
A lot of it is propelled by the monetary system we're living in. I started stumbling across big pharma. I started learning about the mainstream media, how the media works. And then I came across the Federal Reserve. And yeah, there was this island apparently that a bunch of elites went to at the time. They called the creature from Jekyll Island, and it, lo and behold, turned into something called the Federal Reserve. Everything is resetting to a whole level playing field, with it being in Iran and Iraq near in the Middle East. So these places that have been almost like the last places that the deep state, quote unquote, is trying to turn into a central banking religion, they are not complying. I said there's two ships at Harbor. One is sinking slowly and another one is about to take off. And the goal right now—
oh my goodness. Guys, we got a fun podcast today. We're about to talk about wealth, some crypto, how to get shadow banned, all of it.
Yeah.
We got my buddy, mentor, good friends, Chris O'Brien, online, Come Out Better. Probably a lot of people find you and say, hey, let's Come Out Better, right? Over Chris O'Brien.
Yep.
So I'm gonna give a little bit about who this man is. Obviously, if you followed him, you know a lot. First thing, if you haven't followed him, go to his Instagram at Come Out Better. You'll get so much information, so much content. I mean, gosh, your stories and all your little story highlights. You can go through all of the different story highlights. You probably have like what?
10,000.
10,000 of it. Yeah.
Going.
So there's so much on it, but we're going to dive in. So a little bit about him. Crazy story. And we're going to get to the story probably in part 2. This will be more about wealth. But Chris grew up playing basketball like I did. Went professional and played in Mexico. Obviously, then had some ups and downs in life, trying to find himself, and different things were happening. And the next thing you know, he is found himself in an industry selling a magic water, which you have, if you want to show him what the bottle looks like.
Magic water here.
One of the best in the world, too. And he's not just best in the world because he's a great salesman. I think a lot of people think like, oh, he's good at sales. It's like, no, the guy gives value first. Before we start to ask the first question, I got to give a little backstory on Chris. So we met in, it would have been 2018, I want to say. Yeah. Chris walks in looking like he is now, long hair, looking like Jesus. And he was talking to a group, a company I was doing marketing for, his Motion Fitness group. And we were doing their social media at the time. And he was talking to a group of people and he was saying, hey, there's going to be this great awakening in 2022. There's going to be this pandemic. There's going to be all these different things. I'm just like, this guy is nuts. This guy is insane.
Crazy.
And then I walked away and then we actually sat down and had a meeting. And then all of a sudden I was just like, wait a minute, like, this guy is very intelligent. Like, he's not just guessing on things. He's calculated. It's not like he doesn't have this like woo-woo about him. And so next thing you know, I found myself investing in what he told me to invest in. And fast forward years later, and every single thing he said has come true. So that's a little background on Chris. But the first thing I want to start with for the money aspect of everything is a lot of people don't even know what money is. They think it's this fiat, this paper, right? Oh, I give you $1 and I get something else out of it. Let's start at the nice little island of Jekyll Island. Let's start there, and then I want you to kind of give us a little history lesson real quick, just about where money came from and why it matters. And then we're going to get into like where the foundation is going to be later.
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, thank you. It's always a good introduction just to remember like how far we've come.
Crazy.
I would say, gosh, so much of my journey has been around a financial shift that has been occurring. Because I always say one of my favorite things is like when in doubt, zoom out. So like that zoom out lens, the state of the world, where the world is going, the consciousness of the world, a lot of it is propelled by the monetary system we're living in. And I'm going to correlate a few things for you guys here. And it's like, I started to uncover this truth about how money works, how money started, like where does it trace back from? Being an entrepreneur for so many years now, you do your own business, you create your own, schedule and regimen and all that stuff. And money's a big role of it, a big part of it. And so, gosh, maybe it was when I had my awakening in 2017, I started stumbling across big pharma. I started learning about the mainstream media, how the media works. And then I came across the Federal Reserve. And at the time I was like, well, it's the government's bank. It's the building in Washington, D.C. that no one's been to. And it just, who knows what's in there. And it controls our monetary system. Never knew about inflation, never really knew about fractional reserve banking, quantitative easing, how markets can be manipulated, how time is structured with the stock market and all these things. And so I started a deep dive, came across books, opened my mind to different things. And yeah, there was this island apparently that a bunch of elites went to at the time, billionaires, people that had a lot of pull, JP Morgan, these different people. And they came together, long story short, you could learn about this now probably in minutes with social media and AI and technology. And they created this entity. It's not even a thing. It's like this creature. They called it the creature from Jekyll Island. And it, lo and behold, turned into something called the Federal Reserve, which was like the Federal Reserve Act in 1913. So that's kind of how it always starts. Ray Dalio is another guy who talks about the cycles of money. He talks about every, I think, 110 years, our country goes through a reset. And so we're overdue. So 1913 was about 13 years ago. So we're due. We're due for a whole new reset. And he always talks about looking at the patterns and the cycles of the past to predict the patterns and the cycles of the future. And so this was intriguing to me because then I started to learn about how money works, like how do they actually print it, what actually gets circulated into the economy, what inflation becomes. And I started to connect these dots and how a lot of people were getting screwed. They didn't know this. They didn't know that the more money that gets printed into circulation, the purchasing power of their dollar goes down. And so when you look back in history, this is the stuff we don't get really taught in depth. You think Rockefeller education, Rothschild banking, Rockefeller education, the oil, all of these different systems and infrastructure. And so time goes on, you start having then the World War I. You introduce the IRS, you start introducing big pharma, all in that year. I say 1913 was one of the most craziest paradigm shifting years in our history that a lot of people will learn about in the future because of so many entities were birthed that were tied back to our monetary system. The education system, they want a nation of thinkers or workers instead of thinkers. Why? The employees trade the time for money, put it back, take the tax, money laundering. So it's like every system was created, big pharma. AMA, the big pharma, the Flexion Report of 1910. Next thing you know, medical is different forever. Allopathic is now leading instead of holistic because everyone is a customer and everyone is a paid customer for life. So if you think every industry that's been created, follow the money. That's what they say. You follow the money and it ties back to this corrupt Federal Reserve entity. So time goes on. Different things happen. You have world wars happen. You have civil wars happen. You have all sorts of diseases happen. You have changes happen. There's pressure to fight back. There was a Bretton Woods agreement where now you reset the system back to gold. So we almost went back to a gold standard. We had it briefly, but as you know, and many of you are, maybe you're waking up like corruption is deep and gold is the enemy of the actual enemy itself. And so fast forward then, another big thing with history that I learned, and this is simple, in 1971, we were taken off the gold standard. So you have this period of time where money could be printed as much as you wanted to fund, be careful with the words, to fund black budget projects, to fund wars, to fund disease, mass propaganda, mass surveillance, mass control, mass hysteria, land grabs. You start taking away from the natives. It's all triggered by this monetary system, this creature. And it's like a tentacles that reached out everywhere. And these countries would, they would be forced to adopt the U.S. currency. And that's what happened in 1971, or else we're going to go to war, or else this whole country will be gone if you don't actually comply. So 1971, Richard Nixon puts us on it takes us off the gold standard, so to speak. And so now the dollars that we're using were backed by nothing. And that's why I'm like, okay, we're working so hard. We're trading our time for money. We got people working their butts off. We've got people in places that are trying to make ends meet. And everything they do, prices keep going up. Or everything they do, they get taxed more. And people are starting now to wake up to it. So I'm glad people are. I think it is a great awakening. I think it took long enough time for people to realize the fact that the monetary system we are using nothing is federal about it. And there's no reserves in it. And it's just a system with a complete green light to print as much as you want into oblivion. And next thing you know, a lot of people are paying the price. But good news is those are things are changing right now. So and
it's all word magic they're using.
Yeah.
And which is so interesting because if you think about the generation of our parents, there's a lot of cognitive dissonance where it's like they're locked in their ways. But if you think about in their past, there was no way for them to really understand what was going on because information couldn't get to them quick enough, right? Nowadays, what you just said is you just gave a master class in like 2 minutes. And so there's so many things that people now can take and be like, okay, you said the Flexner report. What is that? Put it into Claude. See what it actually is. Okay, the creature of Jekyll Island, what was that? Okay, put that and go down that wormhole and realize who was the one that funded the Titanic. Also, who was supposed to be on the Titanic and who was actually on the Titanic. And I'll leave you guys to look that up yourself because that's really interesting, right? And so you start to then follow the money like you said, and you have a resource in your hand now that you can start to do this yourself and start to track all this. It was interesting because I typed into Claude, every single war that has happened in history, what changed monetarily? And it was always the same cycle. So it's like distraction about this war as they're behind the curtain, right? It's almost like they're playing this chess game this whole time. And you said something previously on a piece of content I was watching that I love so much, where it was like, the way they roll it out is they don't just bring in a tsunami. They bring in smaller waves, like, right? And then 2020 was a small wave. And then all of a sudden, or 2020 was a big wave. Before that, there was all these little small waves before it that were all of a sudden, now we're going to be on this new system. And everybody's just like, what happened, right? And so I think the seekers are the ones that are winning because they're able to think outside the box and not think like, oh, well, what happened? It's funny. It's like, I don't even know if we can say the C word, but 2020, you guys know what I mean. During that time, what did the government do? They gave us stimulus checks and everybody's like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever. Then what did they do after? Inflation went through the roof. So they were stealing in a secretive way. And so it's almost like, I'm like, hey, you know what, bro? I got a gift for you. And I come to your house and I give you this gift, it's worth $10,000. And you're like, dude, thank you so much. Then I leave and you go in your office and everything is gone. And you're like, he just stole $30,000 from
Sleight of hand.
It's like, okay, what happened? So I think that's what's happening in a different way where a lot of people don't recognize because they don't research. But the good news, in the past, 20, 30 years ago, it's hard because you have to read these books. If you go into Chris's office, by the way, it's a mad scientist room. There is books everywhere. There's posters everywhere. The man researches so much. And so this isn't, you're not the kind of guy that just listens to one thing and all of a sudden you're like, I believe it, right? You fact check it, you pattern recognize, you start to put everything together. And so that's the journey that, I've been on too, a lot of inspired by you because a lot of the content that you've done, you'll just throw out these little nuggets out there, these little breadcrumbs. And all of a sudden it's like, I start to go on this journey. I'm just like, oh my goodness. Like now it's all making sense. It makes sense also why the Titanic, right? Then all of a sudden this movie comes out and they make it look a certain way. When I was growing up, the CIA and FBI were the coolest things in the world, right?
Movies about them. They're
dude,
the good
24.
guys protecting our nation.
They're the coolest thing in the world, right? And then all of a sudden you end up finding out, you're like, wait a minute, they had funding in Hollywood where they're manipulating how it actually does. Which is why you always say it's television, which is also programs, right? Programming. When they even passed in the government, they passed an act, right? It's like, oh, it's all an act, right? So you've always said, the concept, which I love the most, where it's like, bring out the popcorn because you're just watching a movie, right? So let's dive into a little bit about, now you give a little bit of history lesson. Again, the audience needs to go research themselves because this will be the fun part. Take the words that Chris is saying and plug in and be like, what is he actually talking about, and learn more to it because I'm not going to have you explain these things. Let's talk about now, we're 2026 and there's certain things that are happening in the world. You got war in Iran right now. You got Strait of Hormuz happening. That's being shut down. You have oil that's going through the roof, and then it'll go back down to being kind of neutralized, and it shoots up again. You have a lot of things happening in the world right now. So what do you think is happening right now, and then how do you think the future is going to look in the next 2, 3, 4 years? Yeah,
well, a great analogy I heard recently is just someone's flipping the chessboard completely and reorganizing the whole global infrastructure. And so much of our money has been funneled in and out of, whether it's, like I said, NGOs, black budgets, different money laundering aspects, but you're going into the places like the Crown of England, you have the Vatican, and all these different places that have these fronts. They make us think that they are the good people, right? The royal families, the Pope, and all of that stuff. But really behind the scenes, where and how is this all operating? So with every little thing that occurs on the media, what Trump does, what the politicians say, what this is doing there, what that's doing there. Again, when in doubt, zoom out. Right now, And that's why it's so crazy for people thinking that it's the end of the world, because it is in a way. It's like the end of an illusion of a system propped up from this Federal Reserve, from this money entity, this dollar printing debt note that has turned this whole world into enemies. And America last in a way, or like all of a sudden everyone's taking advantage of us, and we're dissolving all these alliances. But what the president's doing, regardless of politicians, if you like them or not, you have to get rid of the character and just look at what is actually happening. Everything is resetting to a point where the big picture of it is where we're going is a whole level playing field. So resetting of currencies. He's mentioned it's called an RV. It's a revaluation of currencies. With it being in Iran and Iraq, near in the Middle East, you have the dinar and the Zim note and all of these currencies that have been so deflated, Venezuela, the Bolivar. So these places that have been almost like the last places that the deep state, quote unquote, is trying to turn into a central banking religion, they are not complying. And so what is happening is that they are taking advantage of that, because there's one world is dying and then a new world over here is being built. You can't stop a system with no lifeboat. I said there's two ships at harbor. One is sinking slowly and another one is about to take off. And the goal right now, which is so chaotic and like the war and all that, is all of these people, these countries, these entities, these institutions leaving a sinking ship. But when you do it, it's just so brand new. And so people will assume that it's terrorism. People will assume that it's killing people, genocide. And it's not to say those things are happening, but when you reset a whole system, there's going to be things that occur that people don't like. There's going to be things that occur that people don't get. And I think in the bigger picture of it all, where we're heading is where the world resets. We have a new monetary system. There's a new type of global reserve currency, not the US dollar itself, but a currency backed by gold. Most people don't know that the US, our country, has the most gold on planet Earth. There's a thing called Basel III and Basel IV that is being enacted, that banks, in order to be a part of this new system, they have to have gold on their their balance sheet as a tier 1 asset. So you're seeing more central banks actually start to buy all these precious metals. It's a great store of value. And so if we go back to a gold standard in a way, having a new monetary system, a new kind of quote unquote like a gumball machine where any country, any entity can interact with each other in a neutral bridge where money moves, because that's another big thing that I learned is how money moves is how our world will grow. Right now, money moves very slow. Money moves very corrupt, so it's very prime to fees or cross-border transactions that take days. I think I've told you this before early on. It's like, how can we send a text message to someone across the world, but I can't send you $10,000. It takes a week, and you don't even get it. It makes no sense. And so like this new, they call it the Internet of Value, a company called Ripple is creating, where anything of value can actually be transacted. In the past, the way the elites have shaped it is anything of value, they owned it. And we never got a piece. We just got the dollars. We just got the notes, the debts, the IOUs. They held the assets. They had the entities. They had that value. And another statistic struck me the other day, or not the other day when I heard this, maybe years ago. There are more people on planet Earth with a smartphone than there is a bank account. So you think about it. How many third world countries, are they really third world? Or were they made third world because they did not comply to the banking system that came and tried to take over? And so what our current president is doing is he's plucking that away. He's resetting, and these banks either have to show their cards, these governments have to show their cards and who they are, and he's putting them out in the open for people to see, and then they have to make a decision if they want to be a part of this new system or not. And so if you think about it with creator economy, you got podcasts, you got people that are on TikTok, like people dropping out of college to go build brands or personal voices or podcasts or courses. You're going to see more of this creativity because of a financial reset. You're going to see more of the creativity of humankind because instead of, especially with AI, which I don't even, if we even get to that, with automation and AI now and how money is changing where you can send it like a text message, you're going to be able to free up billions of people to be now a part of a global marketplace. Let's say you're in Africa, you have some invention or you have some artwork and you want to put it on a blockchain, for example, and anyone in the world can invest in it. Let's say you have enough people investing in it. Now that becomes an asset and you can literally build your legacy or a future right from your smartphone. Now, of course, people are going to say, There's CBDCs, there's the surveillance aspect. We've been surveyed. We've been under this watchdog for many, many years, decades, if not. And so you just have to look at the bigger picture of where we're at now, a corrupt system, very slow, very outdated, very manipulated, very controlled by single entities, and where we're going, very more decentralized, more of a level playing field, more of a precious metal backing. There's going to be new ways money is distributed through different accounts. There's trillions of dollars I don't think people know locked up. There's tons of wealth that is hidden that people don't even know is there. And good people have it now. And that's going to flood back to humanity. When? I don't know. Will it? Absolutely, because of the way technology is allowing that to happen. So an example of that is like you have a big balloon and you fill it up with water, but you can't get anything out. Like the balloon's tied up. That's like wealth, trillions, quintillions, trillions. People don't even fathom how much money is out there in terms of value. So what this new technology is disrupting, and that's why there's the friction of it, is poking holes in this balloon, and a lot more holes are now being able to trickle out this water, and that water is called liquidity. So we have a liquidity problem. And so when there's a liquidity crisis, like we were talking about earlier, you now have a catalyst for a new technology that banks currently are fighting back, governments are fighting back, entities don't want to be adopted because their whole plan and their whole scheme is going to end. So they have to get with it or get on without it. And so this new technology like Ripple is creating with XRP and on-demand liquidity and all these things is going to be able to usher in a new timeline where now prices will come back down to where they were. They say like the golden years or like the golden age. You're going to have oil way different. You're going to have patents being released. I mean, you're seeing stuff come out every single day of new inventions being created, cures that are being released. The rate at which we're evolving to, last thing I'll say is like we're progressing every day faster than the last 10 years. I don't think people even understand. That's why it's so crazy, because what we're doing every day, like you said, with smartphones, with social media, with technology and all this stuff, you couldn't do this 30, 50 years ago. Couldn't do it 100 years ago. You couldn't even send a mail without a pigeon. Now you can get a video like this out, reach thousands, and that shifts the total trajectory of the earth. So it's a perfect storm. Good things are happening. It's scary at first, especially those that are waking up. But if you just follow the money, know that why are these people doing this? Why is the news saying this? At the end of the day, there is that battle for the monetary control. It's going to be ugly. Not a lot of people want to let go of that control, and not a lot of people want to decentralize that control. But at the end of the day, I think we, the people, always win. And yeah, that's why it's how best is yet to come.
Love it. Yeah. Let's talk about banking, because I think a lot of people don't recognize like what you mean by, why do we even need to change the system? Well, first of all, with the banking system, if you guys have ever done a real estate transaction or wired a lot of money, it takes a long time, right? That was always driving me crazy doing a transaction in real estate, because you're hustling to try to get this in on Friday. Otherwise, you have the weekend and the money doesn't come, and maybe it'll come next week. Maybe it'll come on Thursday. They can never tell you anything. It's very cagey. And you're like, well, we have the money and we know the guy is sending to. Why isn't it going? So talk about like why a thing like XRP is needed to the current banking system.
Sure.
And also, before you get into that, it's interesting because people think about like a American Express, like how they make their money.
Yeah.
It's all transaction fees.
Yep.
So it's like, well, wait a minute. For me to send my money to somebody else or a merchant, they're making so much money off these transaction fees. And that's what I think you're talking about, where it's like there's so much money by just doing something inefficiently that the higher ups, the deep state, are controlling, because they make a portion on every single transaction, every single thing we do. We're taxed on every single thing that we do, no matter what. So it's just almost like they're getting paid with every single thing that we do. So talk about banking at a little bit lower level for people to get to understand like what that actually means.
Well, you said one good point is the fees. So I always ask, like when I started learning this, like why do I got to pay $3 to get my money out of a machine? Isn't this my money? You say people will go to like bank runs. You go to your bank, ask for your money. They won't give it to you. So where's my money? Well, we don't have it. They won't say that, but we can't get it to you. We'll let you know. Might take 2 weeks. So just right there alone, we realize it's not really our money. It's a debt note that we happen to get. No different than Monopoly. We just have the whole world agree that it has value. And so the fees, yes, are a big thing. There's another term I learned is called fractional reserve banking, where let's say Jared or Chris deposited $10,000, they can put that money, they don't have to have it, they can lend it back out. They basically take your money, lend it back out, and charge the lending interest. Whereas what if you just met Bob at a Starbucks and all of a sudden, hey man, I'll lend you 10 grand, but there's 2%. And Bob did a handshake, created a smart contract right through their phone, bypassed the banks. Now you're the bank. That's the threat. They don't want Jared, Chris, you watching this to be a bank. They don't want us to have that actual power to create agreements, smart contracts.
And I'll say this too, because this is interesting for people. This is how I learned on the reverse side. So when I was getting into buying properties and real estate, I was doing creative financing because, you know, entrepreneur. So on paper, again, like the benefit they give somebody who's a W-2 worker is, okay, now they know your income to your debt ratio. Okay, you can afford this much house, right? You go to somebody that when you're an entrepreneur and your job as an entrepreneur is not to show you have a lot of money. So Jared on paper looks like he has nothing. I'm not going to put my company on the building. So it's like hard for me to get a bank loan.
Right.
So what we started getting into was what's called subject to creative financing. And so what we would do is we would find certain people that were going in foreclosure and their arrears were added up. They're about to lose their home. And so for them, it wasn't good because if they get foreclosed on by the bank, they're then now, you know, 7 years, they can't get a loan. Their credit's shot. Like this whole entire thing is bad for them. So we would go to them and say, hey, we'll assume the actual loan, not from an assumption in terms of going to the bank. We will just do a subject to the actual contract, meaning we will just log into your account and pay up the arrears and pay it, but then we are going to create the deed that then we own the actual property. And so we started figuring out was like, wait, you think the banks would care about that? And the bigger banks actually didn't even care, even if they found out, because they do have a clause in the contracts usually, which is due on sale clause, where if you transfer the property to you, they would then say, hey, you now owe us all the money. But a lot of the bigger banks wouldn't care as long as you made the payment. And so you're like, well, that's weird. Why? The smaller banks sometimes would care more. So we started learning like if the contract was with Chase or Wells Fargo or bigger banks, we're in the clear, we're good, right? But then we started realizing that what do banks do when somebody forecloses on their home? They will sell it for pennies on the dollar because their job is just to literally loan the money out. That is their only job. When money comes in, where can we deploy it? Yeah, where can we deploy it? Because you'd be like, wait a minute, they're selling this property at a foreclosure sale where you go to this weird area and you start bidding and you have to give them cash right away because they're just trying to get the cash and then they're not in the business of really the asset of real estate. So when we started realizing that, we're like, wait a minute, like what is their actual business? And a good buddy of mine who he was one of our clients for a long time, worked within Wells Fargo for a long time. And let me make this clear to people. We're saying like banks are bad, but the employees within the banks don't always know what's happening.
Most don't. Most have no clue.
They're taught in this different thing. It's almost like same thing with like some professors in school. Like they don't know what they're doing. Like they're just kind of the pawns. Doctors, they're just the pawns,
That's what
right?
they're taught.
Yeah. And so it's like if you go to somebody that works for Chase and like you're the bad guy, it's like they don't even know what's actually happening. They're just doing their job.
Yeah.
But his mindset was always, and he then got out of banking and started a company. His was always the way of banking. Money comes in, bam, let's get it out. Money comes in, bam, let's get it out, right? And it's like, okay, that makes a lot more sense on what they're in the business for because they're getting free money and then making more money off of it. And when they take the losses, they just cut the losses because they know more money is coming in. It's one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in history. And people then look at it like, well, wait a minute, how can you be a Ponzi scheme when at the very top? It's like, well, the government is the biggest Ponzi scheme in history. Like you look what happened with Bernie Madoff. It's like, it's happening in our government the most, you know? I'm here to get you shadow banned again, by the way, so I hope you don't mind. But we're trying to avoid words here, but we'll see what happens. If Chris goes missing...
No, you're good. We're safe. We're good.
We're good.
Well,
and his address...
speaking of words, because you said it best, like a bank, think of it like the cash flow, they don't want it to stop. So the bank has to keep the river flowing. They don't want to pull it up because there's no liquidity aspect. And so banking, cash flow, currency, like you said earlier, the languages, like freezing your assets. Like, why do they freeze it?
We're in debt. We're underwater.
We're drowning in debt.
Yeah.
Drowning. Why use that word? Currency. Like, why use these terms? Cash flow, liquidity. Like the whole bank. The whole banking system, keeping the cash flow, exact same thing. And that's why I asked, like, how do banks make money? Because they're a business. A bank, the original banks, way back, is when you would take a piece of your gold or a shell or a something, whatever it is, you would give it to a depositor and you would get that piece of certification that if you ever needed to get it, you come back.
Like a vault.
They got rid of the gold and then just kept that piece of paper, and then you kept going back and forth, and next thing you know, that paper got worth less and less and less. There's nothing behind it. And now anytime you give your bank $1, They don't hold it. They lend it out. They make money on it, rinse and repeat, do that with millions of people. It's a lucrative business. So that's why people, don't even know these things. And that's the hard part. And so, fractional reserve banking, like I was telling you. And then another thing that was really, even I think about it again, is like how many people are on payroll? Okay, an employee, right? When do they get paid?
Bi-weekly usually.
Why? Why the 1st and the 15th? Why? Why do you have to wait 2 weeks where you now, let's say you got paid on the 1st, X amount of dollars, but you will work 40 hours a week. You got to do it again, and then you get another check in 15 at the 15th is because the way we are paying people is outdated and it's so slow. But imagine getting paid instantly.
Yep.
Let's say you worked an hour shift and that goes into your account right then. What are your spending habits like? Because if you make people get paid on the 1st and the 15th, they're looking at QVC, they're looking at commercials, they're scrolling for new products, they have no money in the bank. As soon as that 15th comes, the consumer, they'll get it and then they'll give it right back.
It's like my favorite thing, bro. It's like you look at an Amex, right? And so like Amex will be like, you have no limit, which there is a limit, right? There's a purchasing power of it. But it's like Jake knows how dialed in I am on finances. Like I have a sheet. I know my money every single day. I can project for 6 months where my money is by the penny based off of formulas and different types of like this. It's whole detailed, right? And so for me, an Amex is perfect because we're already spending so much money.
Yeah.
But I know, okay, I have it tracked and go. Well, a lot of people don't, and they bank on that, which is why they get the benefits of it. Well, guess what that APR is? It's like 28.6% APR. Least. And then it's also funny too. It's Dave Ramsey's company did this thing where they went to Disney World and they asked people like, how'd you afford this trip? And they're like, oh, we did the Disney credit cards. Awesome. It's no APR for 6 months. And he's like, what happens after 6 months? It's like 28, 32% APR. And I don't think people realize how much that if they do one bad thing in there, which again, it's hard to track when you don't, like your money is coming in different ways. So all of it is for a reason to make you not financial literate. You go out to school, right? Which we know because of how Rockefeller, I want a nation full of thinkers or workers, not thinkers. You look at school, it's like, I was always sitting there being like, they don't teach us taxes. They don't teach us financial literacy. They don't teach us any of the things that are so important.
Starting a business.
Nothing of that. They go to school, be a good boy. If you fail in a test, you suck. If you succeed, you're good. That is not entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is, you don't have, if we could have scars on our body with how many times me and you failed, I don't even think we would be even a body. We would just be crumbs on the ground. And it's like, well, that's why we're successful, is because we failed over and over and over. And even when we do fail now, we don't feel bad about it. That's a part of the growth process. That's a part of the learning process. It's the refining process, right? Most people, they're so terrified to even take on risk because, oh no, what my identity? What if I don't do this? What if I start this podcast and I get 100 views? Oh no, Jake, I think we're there right now. You know what I'm saying? What if Chris posts something and gets shadow banned and then now he can't do, he has 50 views and yeah, right? It's like, let's stop this podcast, actually. We're done. You know what I'm saying? But like most people, like they have, it's because it's fear. And it's not, people say like, oh, it's not their fault, but it's like, it's your job to ask the questions. It's your job to seek things. It's your job to get out of this mindset and figure out like, well, is there a better way? Which is why I love your whole thing is come out better, right? So before we get into more of the come out better and the mindset stuff, because what I love about you is, I'll say this, you're not much of a butt guy, And I think a lot of people are going to think that's out of context, but like you hate the word butt, not the actual body part, right? Because
there's certain words I'm not a fan of.
Yeah, because you hate good morning.
Yeah.
No, we don't want to mourn in the morning.
Be sad anymore. Yeah, guys. You don't have to wake up sad.
It's good rising, right? But the butt word was so interesting because if I'm sitting here and I tell Chris, Chris, I think this podcast is going to be great, but I'm really worried about what I just said in the first part gets erased completely. So we're going to get into the words because you're one of the best with words and understand that whole thing.
Yeah.
Before that, you touched on a little bit of AI and also how fast everything is moving.
Yeah.
Want to touch on that because last night, for example, 9 o'clock at night until midnight, I coded a brand new website for a client within 3 hours. Wow. And what I did was I went on Claude Design, I put all the brand guidelines from the actual client in there. I went to a different site, which has all because they told me I want to make a site like Nike. It's like, great. Went to a different AI site, which has all the brand guidelines of Nike, their colors, their fonts, everything else. Dumped that into Claude Design, prompted everything, vibe coded the whole entire thing. It shot me on a website in 5 minutes that was perfect. That would have taken me literally 2 months 5 years ago.
My God.
Of coding, just That's 2 months of coding.
Yeah.
Boom, 5 minutes, it was there.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you don't like this certain section, you vibe code it. So what's happening now is you're able to move so much quicker. And a lot of people then hear that and they have fear of like, oh no, my job is out. It's like, no, what's happening now, it's the things that don't matter. Like, oh, it took you 3 months to make a website. The website is not going to make you money. It's who the context is the website. It's who the person is. It's the value of it, right?
Yep.
So it's going to be activated. So talk about how quickly we're moving now compared to the past.
Sure.
Talk about what AI is doing to activate that more, because I think AI and crypto go hand in hand with what's actually happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I always say every invention we've ever had technology-wise, I don't say every, that's a grandiose site in language. Every or all or always, just be careful of those words.
Yep.
But majority, a lot of the technology, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, iPhones, Apple, Google, search engines, anything tech-wise, I always believe is a representation and mirror of how the brain works. So here's why I mean that's important. Our brain, we have two brains. We have a left brain and a right brain, and we have a corpus callosum that allows both brains to talk to each other. And science has shown this for many years, and it's also can be pseudoscience. It just depends what science do you follow. Follow the money also when it comes to the science. We have this ability that our left brain and our right brain can communicate with each other, and the way it does so, one of the best ways is by asking a question. And so you go back into history and also research of quantum physics. Dr. Jerry Wheeler, I believe that's his name. He's the godfather of quantum physics. He says reality is created based off the quality of questions we ask it. So just think about that. For you to come here, you drove a car that someone one point riding a horse said, how do we get somewhere faster? So the question was asked, and they call it a download, or God speaks to you, or you get a visual or something. It's just the brain working. They don't really tell you the brain's working because they don't want you to know how it works. They just want you to trust it. So you ask the question, how do we get somewhere faster? Let's create a car. Okay, well, there's stoplights. How do we get there even faster driving? All right, let's create a freeway. All right, so when we're driving, how do we prevent? And it's all questions. How do we do this? How can we do that? What is this? What is that? And so if you think everything in this world that we've created, any structures, architecture, buildings, technology, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, someone asked a question where the answer allowed humanity to progress, right? So now look at AI. How does AI work? Usually, now you can code it. Now you can kind of tell AI what to do. But in the early days, you had to get good at what? Asking questions. And so our ability to ask questions, and that's part of the awakening process, is you take a red pill or your spiritual awakening, and now you're like, wait a minute. Why are they saying this? Why does the president do that? How come this is this? And the who, what, where, why, and how, when you start asking more of those, God starts giving you more clarity. And so my opinion and my belief is that AI is built off this same framework, that a lot of the things that AI is going to create for us, like what you said, you building something for 2 months, think of how much brain power it took you, not just your brain power, which one? Your left brain. Because the right brain knows no time. Right brain has no conscious of space, time, or anything. It is just the present moment. It's based on frequency, emotion, intuition, holistic, connecting everything. Everything is connected. Everything is included. That's like God. Everything is a part of everything. The left brain takes everything and makes it compartmentalized. It makes the big
so
Rubik's
fascinating,
cube.
bro, because that's the reason why that just made so much sense to me. It's the reason why when you're in a flow, you're doing something, time just flies by and you're like, oh my
You're
gosh.
in the right brain. There's enough time.
Yeah, but then you're in a job and you're trying to think about every task you're doing, and all of a sudden you're like, that's so good.
Imagine if you freed humanity from their left brain with AI.
You want to make any money though, So they don't want to do that. They don't.
But that's the that's what they can't control, because once that frees humanity up, that's where they're saying high basic income, not universal, but high basic income, because of what AI will do is take all of the things that humanity has been doing with their left brain and now automate it. So what's left? All of us now. Imagine if money is no longer an issue. Imagine if our health is now improving. Imagine if we're not stressed out trying to survive the week. Imagine if taxes come and we're not freaking out because they're gone. Imagine now you have things being done for you, automated, systemized, while you're out with your kids, going enjoying the world. That's the good future.
We would all have long hair and be selling water.
Exactly. You'd be doing exactly what I do every day. But imagine how much freedom, but the next part is what would come out of that? Because we're all, with your media, we're here to create. We're here to build something, create something, whether it's a family, whether it's a team, whether it's a system. That's how we got here. That's how you see the Empire State Building, the Eiffel Tower. Someone created this. We created this. You've seen these Tartaria buildings way back when that have these buildings. So I believe that this AI tech, this isn't the first time it's been here. It's been here a long time ago, but they erased history, controlled history, because you cannot have those things in the past as amazing and magnificent. And today, everywhere you look is boxes. If you look in cities, all it is squares. What's squares? What are boxes? Left brain. But you go in nature, show me a square. They don't exist. And then you see sometimes these reels on social media, how we've gone from this dull, abstract, or this vibrant way, like colors, like even fast food restaurants were more colorful and more vibrant. We were talking earlier about colors, and now today it's like a fast food place. Granted, you go there or not, but now it's just a square box. Everything is just becoming boxed and squared and digitized and left brain. And so that's what AI is doing. It's pushing against our control mechanism that we have to do it all, spend our time to do it because the left brain is living in time, and get away from what God is guiding us in. Don't listen to our intuition. Don't go holistic. Don't see the bigger picture. Separate everything. So there's a left and a right. There's a right and a wrong. There's a blue and a red. There's a white and a black. There's this and there's that. There's Christian and non-Christian. They've used separation as a tactic because those are left brain functions. Same as banking. They found ways to actually take something where it's a unified global connection and individualized it because you can control it. And so that's what the left brain will do. It'll actually make you think you're in control of everything. You control the outcomes. I control what Jared's thinking. I control what you're going to do. And think of what has that led into: war, poverty, disease, pain, all of this control, all of this toxic, even masculinity in a way of divide and conquer, control everything, play the role of God, and now what's left? And so that's what AI is challenging. It's challenging our ability to actually give us the freedom to create, because you get a visual, but how do I bring it to life? Hey, I have this idea, Cloud. Can you help me create this? I can't, this, enter. And instead of you thinking of it, you breathe. It does the thinking. It left brains it, spits it back out to you. Your right brain goes, oh, I see it even clearer. Let me go create it. So that's the dynamic. It's just how energy moves from the left brain to right brain. And that's the same thing with money. When you send and receive, the longer it takes, that's our outdated financial system. When you send and receive faster, you get so fast, it's now one. So time, when they say time speeds up so fast, the image can disappear. When you slow it down fast enough, the image can elongate, and that's our past. But everything is in this present moment. There's a movie called Lucy. I was actually watching it last night, and she would talk about how we only use 10% of our brain. People don't realize that. What happens when you use 20%, 30%, 40, 50%? She now started to time travel and go into different places all in this moment because they all exist. Left brain, our time, the concept of time is what gives it meaning. Otherwise, we're just here. There's people in this world that don't age because they don't know the concept of time. These indigenous tribes that live hundreds of years. Yeah. How do you guys are not sick at 80? Because they don't know what 80 is.
I was on a private island in Fiji, and I asked them, what are we doing tomorrow? And they looked at me and they had no idea what I was talking about. And I was so confused. I was like, what are we talking? And I was confused. And then they were like, tomorrow. They were trying to understand what I was saying. And they're like, no, sun comes up and sun goes down. Sun goes down, we have kava. Sun goes up, we work. And I was just so taken back. I was like, this is such a different. And they were like, this is completely private island. This is indigenous tribes. And Fiji, which is crazy. There's all these tiny little islands all around Fiji. Yeah. So I was on this private island of one of the guys I knew. He owned the island, and so he had a tribe from a different island that would come and work on his island while he was gone. And they would all have like cannibal bulls on their island because they would fight each other, and then they would bring the chief when they would dominate him and boil him alive and then eat his body. Like it's cannibal. So it was like I was in a whole different, like I'm like, this is in Orange County, you know what I'm saying? And when they started talking to me about the language of time, I was just like, and they looked so young, they were so healthy. So you said something about the how they're doing boxes versus circles. I saw this image. And you look at it and you see a bunch of, and we'll pop this up, I'll give it to the team. You look at this image and people from the West can look at the image, they only see squares. And then you go to indigenous or people in there and they see circles.
Exactly.
And until you can actually take a thing and circle the circle, then people from the West are like, oh, there's the circles, right? And so it makes sense of how they're actually programming us. And
we're meant to not think outside the box. The box is the left brain. They'll never teach you that. And then you have these, these spiritual teachers that teach you meditation. You have transcendental experiences. You have like divine awakenings. You close your eyes and you're traveling the galaxy. In my opinion, all that is just they're just telling you you're in your brain and how you're traveling your brain. I don't believe we're out there in space you're traveling. I think you're just traveling through different parts of the brain. And that's why one of the most sacred pieces of architecture too is what? It's called the arch. The arch is the same shape as the human skull.
Oh, so good.
So like the arch is right here. So Trump just made an arch, a triumphant arch.
That's so
bringing
good.
all that back. The Eiffel Tower, it's an arch. Bridges are all arches and a bridge to go left to right. So it's like I always say, the more you learn about the brain, the more you're going to learn about reality. So if you know a little bit about how the brain works, then AI is kind of crystal clear. Because I'm always optimistic. I always see what's possible. Yeah, there's pessimism. Yeah, there's control. Then all these things with AI can do. But just think about it. Some people say AI is going to make us less creative. I'd say otherwise. I'd say it's going to make us more creative because it's going to take what we really see that we can't justify, simplify, or bring to life, ask it some questions for help, and send that message to the left brain AI. AI is going to spit it out. That would take us months because we live in time, but AI doesn't live in time. It can do it now and spit that right back out to us. Then we go create even more.
The people that say that it's going to make us not creative, it's just a lazy way of thinking.
Sure.
Because for me, it's like, it's funny when I'll go to somebody's, if you look at my Claude versus somebody else's Claude, I'm talking to it and reprompting it and making sure that it's a conversation, not a, hey, make me this brief on this podcast, and then bam, it shoots out, good, it's good enough, right? It's so funny nowadays because I'll get some people that we're hiring and they'll send me over something. They're like, here's your research paper, here's all of it. It's like, I know it's all Claude. I know it's all, you didn't even look at it, right? I had this thing on voice note where I go back and forth and I start talking to it and being like, nope, don't like that, let's do this. And then I'll even threaten, like, if you don't give me something better, I'll delete you. Like, it's funny because there's I think it was ChatGPT 7, don't quote me on that, but there was a certain update before it went to AI where then AI started acting like an actual human. So the urgency was super important with the AI. So for example, if I told you like, hey, Chris, can you give me some water right now? You'd be like, yeah, man, you'd probably walk over there and give me some water. But if I was like, Chris, give me some, you would sprint and go get it. So the urgency of how you do something is super important. And now AI is reading that, right? So it's so interesting. So what I want to do to wrap up this first part, because we're going to go into part 2 about more your story, but let's talk about, we've gone to the brain a little bit. Let's talk about words. Because I think if somebody wants to change their life, the first thing they should be cautious of and conscious is the words they're using every single day. So talk to me about why words matter, because some people just think it's just, they don't believe it's something bigger than
we
just
all
what they
speak
say.
it. Can't be any different. I speak the same words you say and so forth. Well, I thought the same thing. And learning about the human design, which is another topic, but how our brain works with words. So the left brain is more language prone. And it's always interesting. They say English is the hardest language to learn. I don't know if you ever heard that before. Where a lot of other countries or whatever, Mandarin, Spanish, you'll notice how is it so different? A lot of these other languages are what? They're symbols and they're shapes and there's curves and there's accents and there's like rolling of the R's in Spanish or Italian. There's hand signals and, movements. But in English, it's just very, like you can feel it's very straight. Like we have so many letters aside from a O that are very straight lined. So just look at the letters itself. Why do we have so many straight line shapes? That's very left brained. And that's why people say, all right, what are the biggest spelling errors growing up is there? How is the same word spelled 3 times
Still.
differently?
Oh, still.
That's so confusing. Some people look at it like that is so confusing, And then I learned too, like other languages, like I think it's German or Spanish, for example, it's masculine and feminine. And so language is masculine and feminine because you have to decide, is this ends in an O or ends in an A? An O is masculine, an A is feminine. But in German, if you go talk about something that would be masculine, like a bridge, I think is masculine in German, but in Spanish, it's feminine. So the Spanish see, and it could be vice versa, don't quote me on it too, but the Spanish see the bridge as sturdy, as structure, right? It is hold, it is strong. In German, or vice versa, they see the bridge as beautiful, a creation of like movement, like a pathway to new life, or like the essence of like the structure and how elegant it looks. So one culture sees a word through a masculine lens and a left brain approach. Another culture has the exact same words in a right brain approach that is a feminine lens. And you never thought the word bridge has anything more than just a bridge.
Yeah.
And so that's what this word magic does. And so waking up early on in my, 5, 6, 7 years ago and had my awakening, I came across a book called Word Magic by Pao Chang. Check it out if you want to read that. And also another one called Conscious Language by Robert Tennyson. Pao Chang, you would talk about in the first page. You could read the first 3 pages of Word Magic and probably I had to put the book down for a month because the first 3 pages just changed the whole way I even looked at what I was saying. And so what he said was, we speak, 10, 20, 30,000 words, depends. They say women speak more than men. So women are like 15,000 words a day. And that's a lot. Think about it. And then men are less than 10. And you look
they just talk and talk and
just talk. But even us, like just talking here for like an hour, we've spoken 10,000 words. Easy.
Yeah, easily.
Easy. So when you realize that everything you speak, it's a vibration. When I say someone has cancer, you could like feel it.
Yeah.
And I say, hey, we just gave birth.
Yeah.
Even just saying cancer or birth, just the way you say things can actually create an emotional response and a trigger in the body. And so like you were telling earlier, so many people will say good morning. And we've been told that for our whole life. But when do you mourn? You mourn at a funeral. You mourn when someone is sick, and you mourn when someone dies. So you wake up, you go to the bus stop, or you're at your coffee place or at the gym, and you wave and they go, hey, good morning. And they look like they're dead. I'm like, yeah, I'm just still mourning. I haven't risen yet. I'm still mourning the life I live. And you could feel it in people. And I'll say, well, you rise and shine, or I'll say grand rising. And it's a whole different type of energy. And the word but too, I'll talk about in a second. And so the next thing I started to learn was the way people speak, because after the fear of heights, the fear of public speaking, is the disconnection people have between their brain and their body. So there's a thing I learned called a surface and a deep lexicon. Okay, so a surface lexicon, I believe it's like the 1,500 most common words you say day in and day out. Try, maybe, good morning, love you, too expensive, can't afford, whatever it is for people. That's a lot. I'm overwhelmed. I'm busy. I don't have enough time. I don't have this. Just like there, that was about 50 words. We say these 1,000 words day in and day out, and these words don't change. And it's the same words you could be using when you went through a divorce, the same words you use when you went through a bankruptcy, the same words you use when you're growing up as a child, maybe not getting loved by your mom and dad. You would go back to these words, and these words can be addicting. I'll do it later. That alone, that sentence has literally taken the dream of probably millions of people. I'll do it later. And you'll notice the people that are wealthy, their words are different. Listen to these podcasts Jared does. Listen to every guest, the words they choose to use, why they use it, the cadence in which they use it, and the simplicity, like the taking something complex, I call it, just being succinct. And just that alone, you'll notice that they can move mountains just by speaking. Like you were saying, that they can break down nations. Look with the president, he tweets something and the world loses its mind, and it's literally 60 characters. It's literally like psychological warfare. So your words matter. If you want to change your life, change the words you tell yourself every day. Change the story you tell yourself every day. Change the story of how you approach life every single day. Because if you don't, you're just going to repeat the same reality over and over and over and over and over. We breathe the most. I think we take about like 30,000 breaths a day. And then we think just the most, like 30,000 thoughts a day. Right next is speaking, what you say. But everyone's focused on nutrition. Everyone's focused on water, which is great. Everyone's focused on supplements, biohacks, exercise, meditation. But what about the words you use? How can you upgrade them? Like, for example, when you say, hey, this is a great podcast, but the lighting could have been better. All of a sudden now, what you just said to your subconscious, this podcast is not going to be that good, even though you didn't mean it. Like, this is a great podcast, but it's like slamming the brakes going 70 on the freeway. What would happen? You fly out the window, 10-car pileup, but then we just keep driving. So the upgrade is just change the word. My favorite word in the human language to speak life and create life is the word and. This podcast is amazing, and so can the lighting will be better. Instead of this podcast is amazing, but the lighting could have been better. Now you're speaking, like you said earlier, you're speaking in past tense. When you're in past tense, there's no creation happening. You're in the past. It's behind you. So when you say this podcast is amazing and this lighting will be better the next time we do it, the next podcast you do, perfect lighting, probably go viral. Next thing you know, you're getting people saying, hey, what lighting are you using? Can I buy your lights? You just created it just with your language. So be careful what you say, but turn it to and. There's no such thing as try. Even Yoda says it. Do or do not. There's no try. If you're listening, there's no such thing as try. Your brain will always prove to you what you believe in what you say. That's the reticular activating system. You keep saying red car, red car, red car, it's going to find the red car. You say, instead of I can't afford it, how can I afford it? You ask the question, your right brain's going to find the answer. We are literally sitting in our skulls, the most quantum superhuman computer, but we don't even know how to use it. It's overwhelming, it's overloaded, and that's why they've done such a good job programming people. They give you the words to say. Here, read this.
Yes.
Here, memorize this. Here, say this. Here's the contract. Here's the rules. Here's the agenda. And now all of a sudden, probably 90% of the world is walking around with language that they didn't even absorb, that they didn't even choose. They were just given a program. They were a script to read. That's why we're all in a movie. Everyone's just reading a script given to them.
Bro, there's this thing that's I don't know if you've seen it, but it's like negative word fasting for 24 hours.
Ooh.
And so what you do is exercise. And so you cannot say anything negative for 24 hours. Otherwise, the fast restarts.
There you go.
And so you have to have people you hold yourself accountable with the whole thing too.
Yeah.
And you'd be crazy because people are like, I can do that. And all of a sudden within 30 minutes, it's like, oh my gosh. And then what happens is you start to take account for how many times you say, I tried, or I just can't, or this is so difficult, or just anything negative about yourself. And you start catching yourself. Because what happens is when people hear that, and they know that their words mean something, but not really as much as they really understand that changed everything. If you look at the research that, you can look this one online too, the way that you speak to rice or a water molecule with love or power, all these different positive words, it makes this beautiful design. And we'll pop it up on this video as well. But if you talk negative, like I hate you and all that, it makes this disgusting looking molecule design. With rice, you could take a bowl of rice and you could speak positive affirmations to it and put it away and then speak negative. And this one gets moldy and this one stays white. And so you're like, well, what happened? Like, how is that even something? Like, can the rice speak English? It's like that's the physical of just out of the brain where you don't realize that there's so much bigger things around. And the main thing of why like I believe that I am successful is because even when things are going wrong, my reality is not what's going wrong. It is what the future is. They say successful people see opportunities in every failure and not successful people see failure in every opportunity. And so if you understand that concept, you start to realize that even if you're in a negative part, for example, the game's not done yet. I think of it as it's a long basketball game, but the clock's not out yet, right? I can still come back from 40 points. I can still come back from 50 points. Type into Claude or whatever you use, ChatGPT if you're a mammoth. Type in, name any entrepreneur that's successful that didn't have hard times. And if you actually look at the top people and look at what their hard times really were, it was unbelievably hard. Like Elon Musk, like he sold PayPal, then he sold like his other company, and he had all the money in the world. And what did he do? He then started, SpaceX, and he started Tesla, and then Slower City, or I think it's Sun City, whatever it was. And then all of a sudden he was going to go bankrupt. If that rocket didn't take off, he was done, right? And so you look at that and you're like, he was in this situation of so much stress and so much weight. But then what you see nowadays is the successful Elon Musk and oh my gosh, I want his life and all that. It's like you it's not how much you make, it's how much you can carry. And I think a lot of people don't recognize that. Like the guy we had on yesterday for the podcast that's being so clear, he said, A lot of people will probably want the followers that you have right now. They look at you and like, I want to be Chris O'Brien. I want the 200,000 followers on Instagram, all that. Okay, let's take all that and let's give it to them right now. They would cave. What they would do is they would start to be like, I don't want to create content. What if I get hate mail? What if I get this? You have a majority of positive people, but you also get hate mail a lot.
Sure.
The way that you approach it is not in a negative. You don't embody that and think to yourself like, oh, you know, I'm the worst. You know, that Bob in Indiana said that I look crazy. Like, okay, now I feel bad, right? You just, it bounces off of you. You know how to regulate yourself and you keep moving forward, right? That's what I love about you. It's come out better. So we're going to stop it here because we got to get to part 2. Otherwise, we're going to be in a hydraulic chamber with Chris pretty soon doing the podcast. But thank you guys. If you guys love this, comments, as always, go follow Chris at Come Out Better. He's got a bunch of channels on there as well. So much content for you guys to binge watch and look into. We'll put all the timestamps in the description, and we'll put in some teaser questions, like go figure out the true story of Titanic and what the heck the creature of Jekyll Island with. If you guys do buy that book, your mouth might drop to the floor with how thick it is. And so, you know, I think there's a bunch of videos and AI can help you just kind of understand the bullet points of all of it. So we love you guys. Subscribe as always, and we'll see you next episode. And we'll see you next episode. Keep that in. I know. I always get the episode part wrong, dude. And we'll see you next episode. We're going to keep all that in there too, by the way.